You're sitting in a waiting room. The clock on the wall ticks. There's nothing to read, nothing to do, nowhere to look except a stack of magazines from 3 years ago. 10 minutes pass. It feels like 40. Your leg starts bouncing. Your mind starts drifting to your phone, to anything, to anywhere else. This isn't weakness. This isn't a short attention span. This is a 5 million-year-old alarm system going off exactly the way it was built to. Boredom isn't the absence of a feeling. It's a feeling of its own, with a job to do. And that job was almost never needed to run this long. Think about what boredom actually feels like. Restlessness. A pulling sensation, like something is wrong even though nothing dangerous is happening. Psychologist Andreas Elpidoro, in a 2014 paper published in Frontiers in Psychology, described boredom as a kind of regulatory state, not a malfunction, a signal. It shows up when your current environment stops giving your brain anything worth processing, and it pushes you to leave that environment for a better one. That's the key detail. Boredom doesn't just make you uncomfortable. It makes you move. For most of human history, that push had somewhere to go. Ancestral environments were rarely static for long. A forest changes by the hour. Weather shifts. Animals move. Rivers rise and fall. A group of foragers scanning the horizon for food or threat was working with a landscape that kept giving them new information, almost constantly. When the information did run dry, when a location had been picked clean, or a routine had stopped yielding anything useful, boredom fired, and the body listened. It got up. It walked somewhere else. It searched. It explored. It found other people to talk to. The discomfort of boredom converted directly into the energy of a new hunt, a new patch of berries, a new conversation by the fire. So here's the reframe. Boredom didn't evolve to make you suffer through stillness. It evolved because stillness almost never lasted long enough to need tolerating. Now compare that to a Tuesday. You sit in a meeting where the same slide has been on screen for 6 minutes. You're stuck in traffic behind a red light that seems to be broken. You scroll through a feed that keeps showing you the same 3 types of posts. Nothing here is dangerous. Nothing here is even particularly unpleasant. But your brain doesn't have a separate circuit for modern administrative tedium. It has one circuit, tuned by millions of years of shifting terrain. And that circuit is telling you, insistently, to leave. Except you can't leave. The meeting isn't over. The light hasn't changed. The waiting room chair is still the only chair in the building. This is where boredom stops working the way it was designed to. John Eastwood, a psychologist at York University who has spent much of his career studying attention and boredom, has described it less as laziness and more as a kind of mismatch. The mind wants to engage with something meaningful. It's actively searching for that engagement, and when the environment refuses to offer it, the wanting itself becomes the discomfort. You're not bored because you have too little going on inside your head. You're bored because your head is working hard, searching for a signal, and finding nothing to lock onto. Here's the part that surprises people. Boredom isn't just unpleasant. It's functional, and it might be more functional the more unbearable it feels. Researcher Sandy Mann ran a series of studies looking at what happens to people's thinking right after a stretch of extreme monotony. Participants who had just completed a deliberately dull task, something like copying numbers out of a phone book, performed better on creative thinking tasks immediately afterward than participants who hadn't been bored at all. The mind, denied external stimulation, starts generating its own. Daydreaming increases. The brain wanders into memory, into hypothetical scenarios, into loose associations it wouldn't normally make. Some of the most useful thinking humans do happen specifically because nothing else was demanding their attention, which raises an odd question. What if boredom is actually one of the last surviving pieces of ancestral intelligence still operating correctly, even while everything around it has changed? Ancient environments punished a brain that got too comfortable standing still. A predator could be approaching. A food source could be drying up. A rival group could be closing in. Constant background monitoring wasn't optional. It was survival. That monitoring didn't switch off just because you found a stable, temporarily safe spot to rest. It kept scanning. And when scanning turned up nothing new, the discomfort of boredom nudged you to go check somewhere else. This is why sitting still in nature rarely feels like the same kind of bored as sitting still in a cubicle. In nature, the scanning circuit is still getting fed. Light moves, sound moves, smell moves. Something is always slightly different from one minute to the next, even in stillness. Modern environments, by contrast, are unusually good at freezing time in place. Fluorescent lighting doesn't change. Office chairs don't change. The inside of a subway car looks the same at minute 1 and minute 40. Humans build environments so stable, so climate-controlled, so visually repetitive, that they accidentally built the exact conditions boredom evolved to detect and escape. Except, escape usually isn't available, so the alarm just keeps ringing. There's a reason people reach for their phones the instant a lull appears. It isn't purely habit, and it isn't purely addiction, although both play a role. It's an ancient exploration instinct with nowhere else to go. A phone offers something new every few seconds. New face, new sentence, new image. It's not a real change in environment, but it convinces the scanning circuit, at least briefly, that something has shifted. This is why boredom in the modern world so often resolves into scrolling rather than into stillness. The itch to explore is still there. It's just being rerouted into the only frontier left that keeps producing new information on demand. But something gets lost in that rerouting. A phone gives novelty without direction. Ancestral exploration had a target. Find food, find shelter, find people. The restlessness led somewhere specific, and arriving somewhere specific is what finally switched the alarm off. Scrolling gives novelty without arrival. The feed never runs out, so the circuit never gets the resolution it's actually asking for. You can be endlessly stimulated and still feel that same underlying pull because stimulation was never really the goal. Change with a direction was. This might explain why a long walk with no destination in mind can feel more satisfying than an hour of scrolling, even though the walk offers far less raw stimulation. The walking mimics the exact shape of what boredom evolved to solve. New scenery, new information, a body in motion instead of stalled behind a red light or trapped in a chair. Something in the ancestral circuitry seems to recognize the difference between fake movement and real movement, even when the conscious mind can't quite explain why one feels better than the other. None of this means modern life needs to be rebuilt around the demands of an ancient nervous system. Meetings will still run long. Waiting rooms will still be waiting rooms. But there's something clarifying about knowing what that restless feeling actually is. It isn't a personal failing. It isn't proof that you can't focus, or that you're addicted to your phone, or that something is wrong with your attention span. It's a 5 million-year-old detector, still fully operational, still doing exactly what it was built to do, dropped into a world that finally, for the first time in its long history, learned how to stay still. So the next time you're sitting in that waiting room, watching the clock, feeling your legs start to bounce, remember what's actually happening underneath it. Your brain isn't malfunctioning. It's scanning a landscape that stopped changing, waiting for a shift that this particular room was never going to give it.